Anna, would you mind turning your camera off?
Welcome to those who are joining our webinar. We're going to give it just a few minutes to allow our participants to log on, and then we'll get started. To those that are just joining, we're going to give it just a minute or two to allow our participants to log on. So appreciate you joining us this afternoon. Welcome to everyone who is joining. We'll get started in just probably 1 minute. So we are just a little bit past the top of the hour, so I will go ahead and welcome us today. Good afternoon. I'm Joan O'Hayan, a program official in the Division of Clinical Research in NINDS and in NeuroNEXT, which is the Network for Excellence in Neuroscience Clinical Trials. So I would like to welcome all of you here today for our informational webinar, which will introduce 2 recently published research opportunity announcements for NeuroNEXT: the clinical trials stage 1 preliminary application and the clinical trials stage 2 protocol application. In just a few minutes, you will hear from our presenters, Dr. Clinton Wright, Dr. Sophie Cho, Dr. Anna Ilario, and Dr. Lori Roman, followed by a panel discussion led by Dr. Jennifer Barnes, as listed here on our agenda. We're very grateful for the many questions you submitted throughout the registration and directly to us, and we hope to address many of these during the webinar and the Q&A session to follow. However, we encourage you to continue to submit questions throughout the next hour. To submit questions, please use the Q&A icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Questions will be visible only to the panelists. The chat feature is also turned off during this webinar. And following the webinar, we will post the frequently asked questions along with the answers and a link to this webinar, which is being recorded, to the NINDS NeuroNEXT website. And with that, we will begin our first presentation with Dr. Clinton Wright. Thank you.
Hello, and welcome to the NeuroNEXT webinar. My name is Clinton Wright, and I'm Director of the Division of Clinical Research at NINDS. NeuroNEXT stands for the Network for Excellence in Neuroscience Clinical Trials, and it's an infrastructure that was established in 2011 and has been renewed in 2018 and 2023. The purpose of NeuroNEXT is to support rigorous early phase 2-3 clinical trials and biomarker studies in adult and pediatric populations other than stroke, where we have a separate network. NeuroNEXT increases the efficiency of multi-site clinical trials using central IRB, master clinical trial agreements, central lab and pharmacy, central databases, and it promotes public-private partnerships between NINDS and industry, foundations, and of course, academia. The infrastructure of NeuroNEXT consists of a clinical coordinating center, a data coordinating center, multiple geographically diverse clinical sites throughout the US, and of course, NINDS. NeuroNEXT has completed a number of trials across diverse neurological disorders that you could see listed here, and has ongoing trials as well, and is also open for business bringing in new trial ideas, and that's what we're going to talk to you more about today. The thing to remember is that NeuroNEXT clinical trials and studies are funded through peer-reviewed funding mechanisms that are open to investigators from academia, foundations, or industry. And investigators do not need to be part of existing infrastructure to bring their ideas to NeuroNEXT and to run them in the network. Applications from all are encouraged.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. My name is Sophie Cho. I'm a program director, the Division of Clinical Research at NINDS. For the next 10 minutes or so, I'll talk about some new updates on the NeuroNEXT application process. I'll start with some exciting news to share. NeuroNEXT is moving to other transaction. Some of you may not be familiar with other transaction. It is a unique type of federal funding mechanism other than a contract, grant, or cooperative agreement. Generally, this mechanism is not subject to the federal acquisition regulation nor grant regulations, therefore allows the program to have greater flexibility. It is, however, subject to the OT authority that governs the initiative. Why do we want to use OT for NeuroNEXT? Because phase 2 clinical trial is a rapidly evolving area where a collaborative negotiation process may be necessary. It'll enable fluid implementation of the program, and depending on the programmatic priority, we can establish more proactive and directive programs. I think the biggest benefit for the applicants is that the efficiency in the pre-award and review process will significantly improve. Also, this is a better model for non-traditional partners, such as industry partners, as we can offer faster timeline through OT than typical grant timeline. A research opportunity announcement, or ROA, is a public document that announces the availability of another transaction. We have published NeuroNEXT ROA recently, and the first receipt date will be June 5th. You can find 2 ROAs on this website, or if you can Google NINDS ROA, the first one that comes up will take you to this website. You'll need to scroll down until you find 2 NeuroNEXT announcements. Before we dive into the details of the application process, I wanted to reiterate a few points on the scope of the ROA, which is essentially the same as previous NeuroNEXT funding opportunity. NeuroNEXT promotes the rapid development and implementation of trial protocols in neurological disorders other than stroke in both adult and pediatric populations for exploratory clinical trials or biomarker validation studies. The proposed asset must have completed first-in-human studies and have preliminary information on safety in humans and sufficient data to proceed to a phase 2 clinical trial. While NeuroNEXT is primarily intended for phase 2 trials, the network will consider phase 2/3 trials in rare diseases. So this is how the application process will look like. There will be 2 stages. Stage 1 is called preliminary application, and the application will be submitted by the project PI. The application will address scientific rationale, background, pilot data to support proposed clinical trial, and preliminary plan for the clinical trial. No budget is required at this stage. Once the ROA is open for receipts, which will happen on June 5th, rolling submissions are accepted. Once submitted, objective review panel will be convened, and based on the review result and program priority, NINDS will invite the applicant to apply to stage 2. For stage 2 application, NeuroNEXT and the protocol PI will work together to develop a clinical trial protocol, timeline, and a detailed budget. Stage 2 application will be submitted by NeuroNEXT CCC. Multi-PI is allowed, and so protocol PI and NeuroNEXT PI may come in as multi-PI. Again, rolling submissions are accepted for stage 2 as well. The application will be reviewed by objective review panel, and the final funding decision will be made by NINDS director following council review. One important aspect on this flow chart is that the OTA allows us to have iterative review process. So once you receive feedback from the stage 1 reviewers, you can come back with the resubmission anytime as long as you can sufficiently address the reviewer's concerns without having to wait until the next cycle. The same goes for stage 2 application. We're aiming for a turnaround time of 6 to 8 weeks for each stage of review. Dr. Olario will go over the review process more in detail, but I'll say that after each review meeting, there will be written communications of the review critiques and NINDS decision, which will look somewhat different from typical summary statement, but the content will be similar in terms of description of strength and weakness of the application based on review criteria. Taking a closer look at stage 1 preliminary application, there are 3 things required as an application material. First is cover page, abstracts, and specific aims, 1 page for each. The clinical trial preliminary application is limited to 12 pages, and you can find specific information that are required on the ROA. If certain components are not applicable, please indicate it clearly. I'm not going to read every single word here, but the application asks information on the scientific rationale, on the proposed asset or biomarker, preliminary supporting data, brief trial design, statistical considerations, and references. NIH biosketches on key personnel are required as well. Moving on to stage 2 protocol application, some of the information are required again, like the cover page, abstract, specific aims, and NIH biosketch. Fully developed clinical trial protocol is required. Go, no-go criteria for the stage of clinical development, it should be clearly described. A detailed timeline and milestones, statistical analysis plan, list of PIs, and key research personnel, facilities, and other resources. A detailed budget information are all required. For a multi-PI application, as this is allowed, you need to provide a multi-PI leadership plan. Also, you would need to submit letters of support as applicable. Data management and sharing plan is required for this ROA in compliance with new NIH data management and sharing policy. We promote use of common data elements for all NIH-funded research, and we encourage investigators to describe in the applications any use they will make of these CDEs in their projects. I wanted to briefly mention another related ROA. This program is called URGENT, Ultra-Rare Gene-Based Therapy Program. It focuses on the development of gene-based therapeutics for patients with serious life-threatening ultra-rare neurological diseases, which is defined as 6,000 or fewer affected individuals in the United States. URGENT program accepts applications on gene-based therapeutic modalities, including oligonucleotide-based, viral vector-based, genome editing-based, and other gene-based therapeutic approaches. This research opportunity announcement for URGENT clinical trials is open, and the funded proposals will be conducted within the NeuroNEXT with support of Gene Therapy Consortium established by NeuroNEXT CCC. The application process is essentially the same, except that NeuroNEXT Gene Therapy Consortium will be involved through the process. I will stop here and pass the baton to Dr. Ana Olario, our Scientific Review Officer. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I am Ana Olario, Scientific Review Officer at the NINDS. I'm speaking today and presenting here the NeuroNEXT Independent Objective Review process. Some of you may be familiar with the NIHP review process. The independent objective reviews are slightly different than the standard NIHP reviews. However, they are still focused on maintaining the rigor of the peer review process. The NeuroNEXT review process is a stepwise process consisting of two stages. In stage 1, the asset applicant submits the preliminary application. In stage 2, the clinical protocol application is submitted by the NeuroNEXT Clinical Coordinating Center, the CCC. At each of these stages, the applications will undergo an objective review. While there is no funding at stage 1 for preliminary applications, in stage 2, after the objective review, meritorious protocol applications will be considered for funding. Additional information about the funding will be presented in the next slide. The application process consists of the following. The preliminary applications, which are submitted on a rolling basis by the applicants, protocol PI, will undergo the objective review. The review outcome will be provided to the applicant, and based upon the outcome of the review and programmatic considerations, the meritorious applications will be invited by the NINDS to move to the stage 2. NeuroNEXT Clinical Coordinating Center will work with the protocol PI and with Gene Therapy Consortium for the urgent program to submit the clinical protocol. Meritorious applications will be considered for funding after the objective review upon programmatic considerations along with advice from the NINDS Council. The estimated timeline of the review for each of the stages is about 6-8 weeks from the submission of the application, interspaced by the time needed to prepare and submit the protocol application by the CCC. The goals of the independent objective review are to have a fast, fair, and streamlined review process, to obtain input from the outside experts for NINDS considerations of NeuroNEXT awards, to obtain reviewers' individual opinions for each application submitted. And I would like to emphasize that consensus for the objective review is not the goal. Conflicts of interest will be managed using principle of the NIH review conflict of interest policy as a guide. The panel of the objective review consists of expert and ad hoc reviewers with special expertise at each stage to cover science, rigor, methodology, and approach. As noted earlier, the preliminary application at stage 1 will be submitted on a rolling basis. The protocol application stage 2 will be submitted by invitation only by the NINDS after the objective review. These reviews will be conducted on a rolling basis determined by the number and timing of the application submissions. For the review criteria in the objective review, there are different criteria matched to the stage of the review. At stage 1 preliminary applications, emphasis is on the scientific evidence, on the data and support of the asset, and feasibility readiness of the asset for the proposed clinical trial. There is, however, an early consideration of the proposed clinical trial design. At stage 2 protocol application, there is a thorough review of all aspects of the clinical trial. Review also includes consideration of criteria such as protection of human subjects, safety monitoring, and inclusion plans, for example, gender, minorities, and individuals across the lifespan. In terms of the review outcome, before the meeting, the individual reviewer's assessments are uploaded online in ERA Commons. In these assessments, reviewers identify key strengths and weaknesses in the application. In addition, reviewers are asked to provide a recommendation for a color bin. For example, for green bin, in the reviewer opinion, the application is meritorious and ready to go. For yellow bin, in the reviewer opinion, the application is meritorious. However, some concerns were noted that needs to be addressed. For red bin, in the reviewer opinion, the application is not deemed meritorious due to serious concerns that were noted. These applications may not be discussed at the meeting. After the independent objective review, the NINDS NeuroNEXT staff will notify the applicants of the selection decisions and decision-driving concerns. Review summary statements will not be provided to the applicants. The final decision for funding a clinical protocol applications, a stage 2, will be made by the NINDS Director and NINDS Advisory Council. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lori Roman. I'm from ERA, and today we're going to talk about how to prepare and submit your application using Assist. So our agenda will cover the following topics. So first, your organizations need to be registered in ERA Commons. You may use a streamlined process that's available that does not require a SAM registration, which is the Unique Entity Identifier, or UEI. However, you should know that you will need a full SAM registration at the time of award, as well as if you opt in the future to submit grants to NIH. As part of that registration process, you must have one individual who registers with an administrative role with the authority to sign for the organization. This is the SO, or signing official. And another individual who has the role of Principal Investigator Program Director, PDPI. This is an individual that will basically have a scientific role in the project. Should the situation arise where the same person is wearing both hats, they will need to have 2 sets of credentials. We're going to cover Accessing Assist, which stands for NIH's Application Submission System and Interface for Submission Tracking. We'll go through how to complete your application and submit it, as well as track it. So first of all, this is a screenshot taken from Commons. And at this point, this is where you would log into Commons. And if you are registered, otherwise you can just basically Google ERA Commons. And I've put a link to the website in the upper right-hand corner. And follow the instructions for registering your organization. Once your organization is registered, you will be able to affiliate other individuals at your organization with that Commons account. And as I indicated, you can use this streamlined process that does not require a SAM registration. Most importantly, I've highlighted in the upper section of the NOFO the information for the ERA service desk. This is where you should call or put in a ticket should you encounter any problems with the preparation or submission of your application. This is the Commons landing page, and so let me just briefly walk you through it again. Reference to the Commons service desk. And then when you are done submitting your application, you will be following it using the status function here in Commons. Otherwise, you'll simply click on the purple assist button to be taken to a. This is the landing page where you will need to enter the ROA number that you are provided in the box in the format indicated. So OTA, fiscal year, and 3 digits with hyphens. Should you have started the application, and we'll go through that in a minute, and already have a unique identifier, you would use this search for application function to go back into Assist and continue working on the application that you had started previously. And then this is what the landing page looks like. When you will come in, and you'll see that what you will need to put in here is a title. This can be entered later if you need to edit it. And then you'll see other information that is being pulled from the ROA, such as the indication of the title, due dates, close dates, agency contacts, and then information about the organization, which is pulled in from the information on the person who's been registered in Commons or affiliated with the application. You have the option, if you have the user Commons ID of the PI, for example, to click this button here and enter it, and that way information from the user's account will be entered or pre-filled in the application. After entering the title, whether you pre-fill or not, you need to initiate the application. On this slide, which is part of the summary tab seen here in blue, one finds the unique identifier I indicated earlier. This allows you to stop, take a break, and come back and work on an application at a later time. The application itself is very simple. There's a simple core form that we'll go through in just a minute. And there's also a navigation bar that allows you to preview the application image, validate the application, which is run specific business rule checks, and then lastly to update the submission status, which you'll need to do before submitting. There is also an option to add forms. You will only do this if it's so instructed in the ROA. But when you click on that tab, you'll see a drop-down menu which will allow you to select an additional form, again following the instructions on the ROA. And then when you select that, you'll hit submit, and that tab will appear next to the core form. This is the first part of the core form. What I want to call your attention to is everything that has an asterisk next to it, circled in red next to organization name as an example, is required to be completed. If you fail to include some of this information, you will get an error and be requested to go back and fix it. You'll notice that under the applicant information tab, information has been pre-filled because we know the organization based on the credentials used to initiate the application. You'll note that, for example, number 2, employment identification number, is not a required field. If you don't have one, you may enter 12 ones to complete this section. There's 2 buttons that you need to know about. The first is the edit button seen under application form cord 3 here. This is required. You must click this button if you actually then want to enter information. In this case, for your applications, you will be selecting application and new. You will need to save your application in progress, and you have 2 options. Save and keep lock reserves the application so that no one else can work on it. You can also save and release it to either be worked on by someone else or yourself at a later time. You can also cancel and release the application should you elect not to save any information on the form. 2 things that you want to do following when you're in the process of putting in application to see how your progress is going that's to run the validation. So clicking on the validate application. This will run through and basically check for incomplete information, fields that are missing, for example, and provide you feedback in terms of errors or warnings. Errors must be completed prior to submission. And then the other thing I wanted to call your attention to is the button Update Submission Status. When you click that button, you'll be taken to a pop-up that you'll need to make a selection on. And again, what to remind you is that only the signing official has the credentials to submit an application. So you can work out how you want to deal with it, but someone will need to update the status. I do want to note that updating the status will run the system validations to check errors and warnings, because again, all errors must be addressed before an application is submitted. So again, that button, this runs the validations. In this case, an error was found. The system is very friendly. It tells you exactly what and where the error is and highlights it in red on the forms. So a couple of other things that you need to know is that you must attach PDFs. So again, PDFs are required. They all need to have unique title names of 50 characters or less. The form itself has specific fields that will require you to put on an attachment to add a PDF, such as the abstract. All of the other bits of the applications will be in the ROA instruction. So they will be instructing you or telling you what information you need to include in the application. And again, that information must be in the form of a PDF. Do not concatenate those PDFs. They should all be separate attachments. Run the validations as I indicate to identify early any incorrect or missing information. And again, take a look at what the application looks like. Really easy to pick up kids' homework. And in terms of putting that as an attachment, I've seen all kinds of things like margarita recipes. And again, do not include headers or footers or page numbers. ERA will do that when the application is assembled. So clicking the left-hand navigation for updating submission status brings up this pop-up message. You need to select from the menu Ready for Submission and then hit Add Comment button. You do not necessarily need to add a comment, but you do need to hit this button. It will run through the validations as I indicated. And if there are no errors or warnings, the screen down below is made visible to individuals with, again, this is only active for individuals that have the role of signing official. And then they need to click Submit Application. You want to then keep following the application by clicking the View Submission Status Detail tab. It should only take a few minutes for the application to be processed. This process does not involve grants.gov. It is a direct submission to ERA system. So you want to keep checking for the status. And if you don't get an accession number, and I'll show you that in a minute, and if within, say, 5 minutes, you need to reach out to the service desk. So this is probably one of the most important slides in the presentation. So here is the processed application. And what you'll see is a number here, 4961833. Clicking on this link will take you to ERA Commons, to what's called the grant folder. This will house all of the information associated with this application throughout its life cycle. This is a screenshot of what the application image will look like when it's been processed by ERA, and you should go through that. Multiple people should go through it, making sure that everything is correct. And so this again highlights what I've mentioned, that this should take only a few minutes. And again, if it's outside of, say, 5 minutes, contact the service desk. Most importantly, if you can't see it in this context, we can't see it, we can't review it, and we certainly cannot fund it. So if you can see it in Commons, we can see it in Commons. So thank you very much for your attention.
Good afternoon. I'm Jennifer Barnes, and I'm the moderator today for our question and answer session. I'm just going to give everybody a chance to come on camera. Okay, I'm just going to start out by introducing our panel members. Today we have Dr. Clinton Wright, who's our Director of the Division of Clinical Research. We also have Dr. Sophie Cho, Program Director, Ms. Joan Ohayon, who is a NeuroNEXT Program Official. We have 3 members of our Scientific Review Branch, Dr. Shanta Rajaram, Dr. Anna Olario, and Dr. Iqbal Saeed. Also joining us is Ms. Rosa Lopez. She is our Other Transaction Agreements Officer, and Dr. Lori Broman from the NIH Office of Extramural Research. Thank you all for being here today. We've got actually quite a few questions, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Our first question is, what are now the sites in the network, and how do non-network sites submit proposals? Joan, would you like to take that one?
Sure. Thank you, Jennifer. So the current NeuroNEXT sites are listed on the NINDS NeuroNEXT page, and this is following a request for applications from 2022, and the network was renewed in 2023. But as has been emphasized throughout the presentations, you do not need to be part of a NeuroNEXT site or part of the NeuroNEXT program to submit an application. So we want to encourage anyone to submit applications. If you do submit an application and it is funded, your institution or where you come from can be added as an ad hoc site for that clinical trial. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Joan. Sophie, I think this next one is for you. The question is, do medical devices need an IDE granted by the FDA?
Right, thank you for that question. So yeah, similar to drug trial that requires IND or IND exemption, if the device is tested for this trial, then they do need IDE approval or an exemption. And that would be a funding milestone. So without that, we cannot award.
Great, thank you. We have 2 questions here related to review. So the first question is, will the applications be reviewed within a study section or a separate review meeting? Anna, would you like to answer it?
Yes, thank you, Jen. I will. The application will be reviewed in a separate meeting as a special emphasis panel.
Thank you. The second review question is, will the same external reviewers conduct both stages of review?
Thank you for this question as well. We will ensure that we have specific expertise on the panel to cover the application at each of the stages, stage 1 and stage 2. However, some reviewers may be invited for both staging, depending upon the expertise required.
Rosa, we have a question for you. What is an other transaction authority, and is there a difference between an OT and an OTA?
Okay, thank you, Jen. So yes, another transaction authority refers to the actual statutory authority that allows certain federal agencies to enter into another transaction or an OT. The difference is that an OT refers to the actual other transaction itself, which is the funding mechanism, and the OTA refers to the actual authority. So there's a slight difference there, but that's what the differences are.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is, who should be contacted for questions related to the NeuroNEXT research opportunity announcements? Joan, can you take that one?
Absolutely. So Dr. Sophie Cho is listed as point of contact on our ROAs, but you may reach out to any one of us and we can direct you to the correct person to be able to answer your question. And information is found, our contact information is on the NINDS website.
Thank you. Let's see, we have another review-related question for Anna or Sophie. So this is, if there are no summary statements released to the applicant, how will the applicant be informed about the outcome of the review?
Thank you, Jennifer. After the objective review, the program team will provide a notification letter to the applicant in informing about the outcome of the review.
Okay, thank you. Sophie, do we still need to fill out the concept synopsis form? And for some who may not know, could you just briefly summarize what the concept synopsis form is?
Right. We encourage to use the concept synopsis form when the potential applicants are planning to submit a proposal, and this you can consider it as a pre-application form. It is not part of the application materials. It is to help us NINDS staff to provide the best advice and guidance through the process, also to ensure that the proposal is within the NINDS mission and a good fit for NeuroNEXT. So we continue to encourage to use that, and that is available on the NeuroNEXT website, both on NINDS and neuronext.org.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so there's a series of questions here I'm going to put together because they're all sort of related. So the questions are, can you explain the iterative feedback process? And is this similar to a grant application resubmission? And how does this align with the green, yellow, red bin categorization?
I think I'm going to let this to Sophie to answer.
Sorry, took a minute to unmute me. Right, so on the flow diagram, so there's stage 1 and stage 2 review. After the each review meeting, there will be a written communication, so that will again look a little bit different from the typical summary statement, but will be very similar in terms of the content. To summarize the review critiques that are score driving, and in certain, there will be a notification from NINDS about our decision for the next step. So in some cases, there are maybe cases where responses to clarify a few issues may be enough, and so we'll request that to be submitted. In other cases, maybe there are multiple weaknesses that needs resubmission, going back to the application and come back with a full resubmission application. So there will be a written communication again with a review summary and NINDS decision.
Okay, thank you. The next question. The research opportunity announcement indicates NINDS expects the total cost for the proposed project, direct costs plus F&A, will not exceed $25,000 per subject randomized. Can NINDS expand on this and let us know the process if budgets exceed this guideline? Joan, can you take that one?
Sure, I'll take the budget question. So, we expect that any budget submitted is going to be reasonable and justified and needs to reflect the bona fide needs of the study and really targeting to stay within that $25,000 limit. That being said, we recognize that clinical trials can have some complexities. So this is why we encourage you to reach out to program staff before submitting an application so that we can have these conversations. And all budgets will need to be approved by NINDS. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Sophie, what is the total timeline from project proposal to funding, and how does this differ from the grant application process? Can NINDS provide guidance regarding the timeline of each stage? stage 1 submission until stage 2 potential funding decision?
Yeah, so there can be multiple factors that affects the total timeline. I think for the review, which I think is the main difference between the grant and OT process. For each review, we're aiming for a turnaround of 6 to 8 weeks, which again is much shorter than the grant review cycle. Once the stage 1 review, favorable stage 1 review and NINDS invites the applicants to proceed to stage 2, the project PI will then work with the NeuroNEXT to put together the protocol and budget. So that timeline can be variable. Between the stage 2 review and the funding decision, there can be a little bit of variability because we're still bound to the council, timeline. Yeah, otherwise, sometimes through the iterative process, there may be cases where additional work, is required that takes additional time. So there can be many factors.
Okay, thank you. Looks like we have a contract question here. Rosa, maybe you can take this one. The question is, are third-tier subcontracts permitted under this ROA?
So there are no subcontract restrictions in the ROA. As long as they are not suspended or debarred, you may propose a third-tier subcontract.
Thank you. Is there a page limit for the clinical trial protocol application stage 2? Sophie or Joan?
Yeah, I can take this one. So we didn't put a specific page limit because we acknowledge that the length of the full clinical trial protocol can be variable depending on a particular study. We included the link for the NIH protocol template, so that can serve as a guidance with appropriate modifications as needed.
Okay, and here's another page limit question. Is there a page limit for the multi-PI leadership plan? Again, stage 2.
Right, yeah, again, there's no specific page limit for that either, but there are, again, is a template available for the multi-PI leadership plan on the grants.nih.gov page. And so it can be short and concise, really, 1 or 2 pages, a couple paragraphs. So the template can serve as a guidance.
Great, thank you. The next question, can small business apply to OTA? The slides indicate that OT is not applicable to SBIR. Joan, can you take this one?
Sure, absolutely. So the statute for SBIR and SBIR, Small Business Innovation Research, does not allow us to use OT funds. However, small businesses still may apply to this ROA. We also, through NeuroNEXT, still have our current grant, the U44 grant mechanism with SBIR that's available through NINDS. So there are a couple options, but we would encourage small businesses to apply to one or the other.
Okay, thank you. Rosa, we have a question here for you. What is the average time from funding decision to the actual award?
So it all depends, and it depends on the extent of the agreement and budget negotiations. I've seen the time frame be as quick as 30 days, but it could also be a lot longer depending on the amount of terms and conditions that we're negotiating. So I would say on average, I would say maybe 60 days.
Okay, thank you. Joan, what funded infrastructure comes with
So the existing NeuroNEXT clinical sites infrastructure grants include a site PI, protocol coordinator, as well as support for a fellow. The individual projects must come with their own PI, their own coordinator, and then of course they have the support of the DCC and CCC as well. Thank you.
Okay. And Joan, this one will also come to you. Is there a limit on the budget?
So as I mentioned earlier, when talking about the per subject cost, we just want to make sure that you submit a reasonable, justified, bona fide budget. We want to be good stewards of our taxpayer dollars, and everything must be approved by NINDS. So we don't have a finite official limit, but we hope that everything would be submitted reasonably and fair.
Okay. Sophie, are case studies relevant to NeuroNEXT to develop interest in a particular drug study in a particular cohort?
So currently case studies or just natural history studies are not the main goal of this ROA or the goal of the NeuroNEXT infrastructure. As Clint mentioned, and I also mentioned, we're focused on the neurotherapeutics in phase 2 or sometimes phase 3 clinical trial space or biomarker validation studies. So that needs to be in the scope of the ROA and the NeuroNEXT infrastructure.
Okay. Will PPIs be expected to submit some form of recruitment estimates at stage 1, such that they will need to know how many sites are needed for the proposal? Sophie, can you handle that one?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
I'm sorry. Will PPIs be expected to submit some form of recruitment estimates at stage 1?
At stage 1, okay, sorry, yeah. So at stage 1, there is no need for the detailed recruitment plan. We just need to see, estimated sample size, at that point, that's really all is needed.
Okay. Here's a question, another sort of budget related. Does NeuroNEXT pay for testing of drug device combinations where the drug is already approved for us in humans? So either Sophie or Joan?
Do you want me to? Oh, go ahead, Sophie.
Right. So I'll say, there can be different cases. So, in certain trials, there may be industry partners who are willing to donate the drug and matching placebo. In other cases, NINDS need to provide the support. In some other cases, whether a particular drug is part of standard of care, then it may be covered through insurance. So it all depends.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. How do proposals already in the NeuroNEXT pipeline feed into the stage 1, stage 2 process? Do they go back to the beginning or get grandfathered in some way?
So the previous NOFO, the Notice of Funding Opportunity, has already expired. So once the ROA for stage 1 opens, which is June 5th, any new proposals need to come through that. The proposals that were submitted to previous NOFO already and waiting for the review will then go through the grant process, the old process, but any new proposals will have to come through stage 1 ROA.
Okay. And I think we have time for one more question here. In previous RFAs, there was a minimum requirement of using 4 NeuroNEXT sites in a given proposal. Is there a similar case for this OTA?
So if you want me to
Jim?
address. Oh, sure. So for the way NeuroNEXT is set up, that we would prefer to have the need to have more than 4 sites. If you expect that with your trial that you would need 3 sites or less, this may not be the best mechanism for you. So that's something that we could discuss during, while you're considering and submitting an application. But ideally, best use of NeuroNEXT would be for multi-sites greater than 3.
Okay, thank you. So we are about at the end of the time that we have scheduled for our question and answers. I would again like to thank all of our panelists for being here today and our audience for submitting their questions. We were not able to get to all of the questions that were submitted today. However, Joan will go over with you how you can get any remaining questions answered. So I'll turn it over here to Joan.
Thank you. So thank you, Jennifer, so much for moderating. And I want to thank the team and the panelists for the engaging discussion and all the participants for submitting questions ahead of time. It gives us a chance to really reflect and be able to provide some good answers for you and throughout the hour. So hopefully we have addressed most and provided clarifications on these 2 new research opportunities. As I mentioned during the introduction, the frequently asked questions along with the answers, as well as this recording will be posted to the NINDS NeuroNEXT website. Should you have any additional questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to any one of us. And lastly, but most importantly, I want to thank Mary Pate, Jana Bessler-Ehrlich, NINDS IT support, especially Kevin Powell, and again, Jennifer Barnes, who played many roles in this webinar for the logistical technical support in making this webinar possible. So with that, I guess have a great afternoon. We look forward to receiving many applications. So thank you.